Thanks for joining us today for Jennifer Schaus and Associates and our Webinar Wednesday program. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Our webinars are every Wednesday and are provided complimentary. They are recorded and can be downloaded from our website and YouTube channel, which now holds over 300 of our government contracting webinars. In the interest of time, we do not take questions, so if you have questions for our speakers, we will have their information on the last slide of the presentation today. A special thanks to our educational sponsor, the National Veterans Small Business Coalition, for making these webinars possible. The NVSBC is the largest nonprofit trade association for veterans. Please visit their website for more information. Okay, and now a little bit about us. We work with U.S. federal government contractors, including product, service, and software firms. Our services range from market analysis reports to contract vehicles and compliance. More information is on our website. We also have opportunities for your organization to advertise in our newsletter. We now reach over 21,100 subscribers, and this includes both contractors and government. Contact us for pricing information with the email shown on your screen. Please join us for a virtual conference on Tuesday, October 13th, Hot Topics in GovCon, where we will cover topics ranging from working with prime contractors to selling IT services and software through channel partners and system integrators. Tickets are $40, and please register on our website under the events section. Okay, and now to introduce our speakers, Nora Bent and Julia Shagavac. Welcome, Nora and Julia. We are glad to have you here with us today, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Great, thanks, Hunter. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. As Hunter mentioned, my name is Julia Shagavac, and unfortunately, we had our first and hopefully only typo on this page. My colleague's name is actually Nora Brent. So thank you for joining us. We're here from the firm Smith Packard McWhorter in Tysons Corner, Virginia. We want to thank Jennifer Schaus and Associates for hosting us today. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you all about the SBA's 8A program, as well as the GSA Schedule, and how those programs interplay. Hunter, if you want to move to the next slide for me. Thank you. And we can actually go one more ahead. Perfect, thank you. So if you've been attending the webinar Wednesdays this month, I know that they've been covering the GSA schedule, and then in October, they'll turn to the SBA's 8A program. So this program is designed to kind of give an overview of the overlap between the two programs. It's important to mention at the outset that these programs are not mutually exclusive. They're very different. They have different structures and purposes, but they can be complementary in certain circumstances. So what we'll do today is just give a quick overview of both. And again, you may be getting a little bit of repeat if you've come from the previous GSA webinars on Wednesdays, and you may get a little bit of repeat next month, but this program is intended to cover the interplay between these two programs. So there are certain pros and cons to each, and we will cover those, and we'll also cover pros and cons and then sort of strategy tips for folks who are thinking of participating in each. But for now, just to open it up, I'll explain that the GSA schedule is a platform for selling to federal, state, and local government customers, available to commercial contractors of all sizes after an application process and after you qualify. With the schedule, you can kind of think of it as the Amazon for government. And in fact, the schedule itself sort of looks like Amazon when you when you view it. So keep in mind that the GSA schedule is essentially a government-wide Amazon that sort of streamlines procurement. The SBA 8A program, on the other hand, is a business development program. So it is targeted specifically at small businesses, obviously through the SBA, the Small Business Association, but also specifically to disadvantaged businesses, which a number of certain disadvantaged groups qualify under that header, but obviously to a much smaller target group of sellers than the GSA schedule. And the program itself offers a number of benefits to contractors who qualify. Those include management, technical, financial, and procurement assistance. There are mentoring opportunities, and also certain contracts are either sole sourced or set aside for SBA 8A contractors. So as I mentioned, we're going to cover both of these, and then towards the end, we'll talk about the interplay between them, advantages, things like that. And as Hunter mentioned, please feel free to reach out to Nora and I with questions, but we'll see if we can't answer them today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nora to talk about the SBA 8A program. And Hunter, if you could move to the next slide for us, please.
Right, so the 8A business development program is designed to help provide a level playing field for small businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged people or entities. The government limits competition for certain contracts to businesses that participate in the 8A program. And so this is a huge advantage for businesses and opens the door. So there, as Julia mentioned, and as you can see on the slide, one of those doors are set-asides and sole source awards, and these help you benefit your business without really having to compete. So it's a huge advantage for a business and can really open the door to government contracting for businesses that are new in that arena. And so 8As are also able to participate in the SBA Mentor Protege program, allowing small businesses to receive assistance and guidance, as well as form joint ventures with other entities without risking violating affiliation rules about ownership and control of small businesses. And so that's kind of the what. So Hunter, if you could go to the next slide. So the who, there's a lot of resources available on SBA.gov about eligibility requirements and the application process. And so on the SBA Certify website and SBA.gov, you can see all of the who here, the definitions and requirements to participate in the 8A program. And so if you meet these eligibility requirements, you can go to SBA's Certify website and start processing your application. So I don't want to read off each of these bullets, but Hunter, if you want to go to the next slide. And so the how, that explains, if you go to SAM.gov, that's the first step. You have to create a profile. Any entity wanting to contract with the federal government needs a SAM.gov profile. And so that's the first step. And then after that, you can go to certify.sba.gov and complete your certification, indicating you meet all of these eligibility requirements. And so once you're accepted into the program, then you can update your SAM.gov profile to indicate that you are an 8A member. And so this provides you a different list of contracting opportunities that are not available to other contractors outside of the 8A program. So certification lasts a maximum of 9 years, and this requires annual reviews to remain in good standing, but it also requires continuing eligibility. So while 8A contractors, if they do have qualify as an 8A disadvantaged business, you can get certain contracts, but if you either age out of the program or if you're no longer small and meet the eligibility requirements, contracts for the most part that you have that you've been awarded while still small and while meeting these eligibility requirements, you'll be able to keep for the life of the contract, but even if you're no longer small. So it's really just a matter of qualifying at the time that you're awarded the contract. Hunter, if you can go to the next slide. And so as I said in the beginning, being an 8A program participant is an enormous advantage for a business, especially those that are trying to start out and gain a foothold in the government contracting space. And as we'll get to the GSA Schedule contract also, a huge benefit is that while you get sole source and set-asides, this is an incentive for the agencies to award, because they have certain goals, not necessarily just for rewarding a certain amount of 8A business, but to small disadvantaged businesses. They have certain goals that they have to meet. And so both on the GSA schedule and otherwise, 8A contractors, to the extent that they receive awards, that helps the agencies meet those goals. And so In addition to that, there's opportunities for training and development in the mentor protege program, but that's not necessarily specific to the 8A program. That's for all small businesses, though there are different advantages for 8A businesses compared to small business mentor protege at large, because there are also within the small business administration, rather than a large business mentor or other mentor, there's different guidance and training and mentorship available from the government itself. So I think, Hunter, you can go to the next slide. And then the why not, as I said, this is not a 9-year, that's it, one-time certify, and then you're good for the life of the program. You have to there are annual reviews, and there's a bit of an administrative burden and evaluations each year. The goal is towards graduating the program and demonstrating to SBA that you are working towards graduation to continue to be entitled to and justify your participation in the program. And so while there are these opportunities for training and development, you have to take advantage, and you have to make sure that you continue to be eligible in order to be able to participate for the life of the program. So you can go to the next slide, Hunter.
Thanks, Nora. So that was kind of the high level of the SBA 8A, and now we'll talk about the GSA schedule. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's important not to think of these as, you know, yin and yang, one or the other. They are two very completely different programs with different purposes and different advantages, obviously. So as an overview, like I said, I think it's best to think of the GSA schedule as a marketplace, as almost an Amazon for the government. Essentially what these are IDIQ contracts, but it's a much more streamlined procurement process. I think the best way to get to know the GSA schedule is actually to view it. It is publicly available in an online catalog, and so you can kind of click through and get a sense of what's listed and what type of products and services there are. I was clicking around recently on the schedule, and the first thing I saw was a specific type of cages for laboratory animals. So you cannot imagine the breadth of types of products and services that are available on the schedule. And that's the benefit of it to government customers, is that it's like shopping on Amazon or whatever online shopping tool you use. So another advantage is that the schedule is available to federal, state, and local government buyers. So you really reach a wide audience. There are a ton of commercial supplies and services. I think last count was 11, might be approaching 12 million. And the other thing to note is that one of the draws of the schedule is that items are often listed at volume discount pricing, because sellers are available to, or are able, to list and sell to a larger number of customers, and thus are able to offer discount pricing, which of course is also an advantage to the government. The schedule makes up a huge portion of federal procurement spending, around $40 billion a year. So it is a widely used program. And in addition, the schedule is, I believe, schedule sellers make up about, 8A contractors make up about 80% of schedule sellers. So this is a program that's often taken advantage of by small businesses. There are a lot of advantages to participating in both. And so it's certainly a good program to familiarize yourself with if you are a small business looking to reach more customers. And again, as I mentioned, the best way to get familiar with the program is just to go on gsaadvantage.gov or the GSA's e-library for the schedule and sort of click around, see what types of products and services are available at what prices, so that you can see if it seems to be right for your business. Next slide, please. So in comparison to the SBA 8A program, the schedule is open to a lot more types of contractors. There's not size restrictions. The minimum requirements to apply are you must be in business for 2 years, although even there are exceptions. You can participate in the Springboard program, which helps younger contractors participate in the schedule. You have to have an annual revenue of at least $25,000. and then be able to demonstrate some sort of past performance. So if you worked on federal contracts and you have CPARS ratings from those contracts, you can provide those ratings. Alternatively, you can provide federal or non-federal references from previous customers. You just have to provide a few more if they're not official CPARS ratings. So a bit more flexible criteria for actually participating. Next slide, please. So the flip side of that, of it being a bit more open to more contractors, is that it is a very tough application process, sort of notoriously complex. The application itself can take, to get approved, can take up to 2 years. And in fact, it's so complex that GSA offers a wide variety of materials and trainings to help assist contractors, and especially small business and 8A contractors, in applying. And those resources are available from both GSA and the SBA. So as you can see here, this graphic is from GSA's website. The application process alone is a multi-step process. It's very complex, often is useful for small businesses to have some sort of advice and consulting throughout this process, whether that be from consultants, firms, or from the federal government resources that are provided publicly. Next slide, please. Great. So there are obviously benefits to being on the schedule. That's why it's created. And it's important to keep in mind the benefits to the customer, which obviously offers an incentive to sell because so many government customers prefer it. You're getting around, although the application process is a lengthy one, you are getting around that public bid process and the more traditional procurement processes that can be cumbersome in their own ways. So that is probably the biggest pro for both government buyers and GSA Schedule sellers, because the customers may prefer the streamlined process, and for the seller, once you're actually on the schedule, you're also benefiting from that streamlined process. In addition, as I mentioned, the schedule is available to federal, state, and local government customers, available to any agency throughout the government, and so you're getting access to a fairly large customer base there, potentially agencies that your organization may not have thought to work with or may not have any occasion to work with otherwise. So it does provide a lot of contacts throughout the government. Next slide, please. So obviously there are some downsides too. One of the biggest ones is just the barrier to entry of this complex application process. And then, like Nora mentioned with the 8A program, there are certain processes that you have to maintain to stay in the program. So just like any other federal government contract, you need to maintain contract compliance and keep an eye on your terms and any administrative issues that you may need to take care of throughout the life of the program and throughout the life of your schedule contract, which contracts can last up to 5 years. So one of those contract compliance issues is that you must maintain minimum sales of $25,000 within the first 2 years and then each year after. And in addition, there's administrative burden having to do with reporting and tracking your sales and your prices. And for some customers, or for some contractors, excuse me, there is a downside in providing such full transparency of your pricing, not just available, to the buyers, but then also publicly available for viewing to anyone in the public. And also you're listing on the schedule often at volume discount pricing. So you are being fairly transparent about fairly low prices, which can be a consideration for certain contractors, although it could be a benefit depending on what type of contracts off the schedule you'd be looking for. Next slide, please. Thanks, Hunter. So we've discussed the pros and cons to each of these individually, but as I mentioned, because so many sellers on the schedule are small businesses, there are considerations and advantages and disadvantages of participating in both at the same time. So as Nora and I have both discussed, you're getting a much larger customer base, especially through the schedule, but then also unique contracting opportunities. So there are obviously set aside opportunities through the 8A program, sole source opportunities, and then there are certain set asides on the schedule itself. So you are able to reach customers, like I mentioned, that you may not have occasion to work with otherwise. This also creates a potential stepping stone to other opportunities. So with both programs, as a small business, and especially a young small business, you're obviously interested in growing and making contacts, making connections that will help you grow your business going forward. And so using both of these programs and taking full advantage, you really have the opportunity to get to know a lot of people in the government, a lot of buyers, get a lot of good experience, and then you can move on to other opportunities from there. The other benefit to both is that GSA and SBA have some of the most comprehensive and helpful resources available to contractors in the federal government. There are programs, there are contacts available, there are trainings, and especially trainings that are targeted specifically to 8A contractors that want to get on the schedule. So there's federal guidance, if you want to, tackle both of these programs at the same time. Obviously, there are downsides with any federal procurement work. As we all know, there's an administrative burden. It's not just like opening a store and selling to the general public. There's many more regulations and things to be aware of, as well as administrative tasks during the life of the program. So that's something to be aware of, but not necessarily a huge downside, because you'll be dealing with that in any government procurement situation. So the other thing is that for both of these, there are no guarantees about winning awards. Obviously, through the SBA program, you're going to have a better chance through set-asides, because that's a smaller pool of sellers. But on the GSA schedule as well, there are multiple sellers. You never know if you're going to be awarded the actual contract. And so that's something to keep in mind as you deliberate whether one or both of these programs are right for you. There is obviously some sort of burden in entering the program. So you need to kind of take stock of your chances of being successful within either or both programs before you decide to take that leap. Can we go to the last slide, please? Thank you. So as we mentioned throughout, there are going to be pros and cons for each of these programs and for participating together. Don't get us wrong, just because we're pointing out the potential cons today. These are both fantastic programs and are taken advantage of by a huge number of contractors, especially those who are incipient to federal procurement and are trying to, establish their business and build and grow. So certainly things to look into, but also it's helpful to be aware of the potential pitfalls before you get into the program. So with the GSA schedule, and this is kind of directed at contractors who are already in the 8A program or who at least qualify, there's a few things to take into consideration for 8A contractors who are considering whether or not to join the schedule. And possibly the biggest one of those, especially for 8A contractors, is that the schedule proposal process is very confusing. It's very complex. It's very lengthy. You can do a few Google searches and find hundreds, if not thousands, of resources for actually completing an application for the GSA schedule. So something to keep in mind, especially for a small business that might not have that proposal experience and might not have the back office support needed to actually, participate in and complete the application process. On the other hand, though, it's often worth the exposure and often worth the sales volume. So you're getting great opportunities from being on the schedule, especially as an 8A contractor. So that's a business case for you to make, whether the barriers to entry in terms of the administrative burden are worth the potential sales. As I mentioned in the cons section, is the biggest risk of participating in these programs is that you don't get any benefit from it, you don't make a sale on the schedule or make enough sales, and you don't, qualify for any set-asides. Although with the SBA 8A program, the risk is lower, because even if you don't obtain a set-aside award, you will have access to the mentoring and the technical training and procurement training, things like that. The other, before you get to the schedule process and deciding whether as an 8A contractor you'd be interested in participating, the biggest barrier to entry in the 8A program is really qualifying. So if you are a small business, keep an eye out for the list of qualifiers for being a small disadvantaged business under the 8A program. If you are a qualified candidate for that program, it's a lot easier of a choice to get into the SBA 8A program if you can, because of the mentoring, the training, the set-asides, the advantages to that program, because the federal government is so heavily invested in developing smaller and disadvantaged businesses. As Nora mentioned, they have their own procurement goals for those types of contracts. So if you can be an SBA 8A contractor, that's often an easier choice as long as you qualify. The schedule, you have to kind of decide whether it's right for your business. And along those lines, as I mentioned, the best thing to do is just to get on the schedule, get on the marketplace, see if your product or products that you are either already selling or considering selling is already being sold. Compare your prices to what's already out there. So again, all of this is publicly available, so you can do quite a bit of market research in order to decide if that lengthy proposal process is worth it for your business. And you can also kind of take stock of demand that way. If there are already multiple sellers and they offer competitive prices, probably not worth it to go through the entire proposal process. But as a larger note, as I mentioned, GSA and SBA have such great resources. There are obviously, firms and consulting firms that have plenty of guidance to offer. So as an 8A contractor, or even as a potential 8A contractor, take advantage of those resources, go to the trainings, go to your local GSA and SBA offices, and kind of get educated before you decide to take the leap for either one of these programs. So that's what we have for you today. Hope you learned a bit, and as I mentioned, feel free to reach out about either one of these programs, about strategy for joining, any questions you might have, we're here to answer. So thank you all for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nora and Julia, for a great presentation and sharing your time with us today. And thank you to everyone who joined us. The recording will be on our website and YouTube channel within the next 24 hours. Please join us this Friday as we cover each part of the FAR, and join us next Wednesday for more hot topics in federal contracting.